Hello and good morning. Welcome. My name is Emmanuel, and I'm the priest of St. Paul's Anglican Church in West Meadows. I warmly welcome you. Thank you for joining us. I personally feel very blessed, and I am very excited that for the past few weeks we have been studying the book of Esther. I have found this book a wonderful book full of inspiration and encouragement. Today, we will be focusing on chapter 3 of the book of Esther. One of my all-time favorite actors and directors is Charlie Chaplin. Once he said, "You only need power when you want to do something harmful. Otherwise, love is enough to get everything done." Isn't this amazing and a very true statement? I find this statement so true in chapter 3. In chapter 3, we learn about this man, Haman, who becomes the villain of the story. He is a small man in a big position because Hashayasha, the Persian king, has elevated him and has given him all the power in the empire. He becomes the most powerful man, the second most powerful man in the empire, and king asked all the people of land to bow down to him. He issues a decree. But very soon, we learn in chapter 3 that how Haman uses this power to abuse, to subdue, to discriminate, to kill. That's his approach to power. What is your approach to power? Can you reflect upon many positions in your life, many opportunities in your life that you had power? In your family, in your relationship with your friends, in your workplace? How did you use that power? Did you use that power to bring people closer to each other? Did you use that power to influence a positive change? Did you use that position to create something better for the common good? Or did you use it to abuse it? Did you use it to put people down, to break hearts? You know, all of us in our lifetimes are given opportunities. We don't need to be politicians. In our everyday life, there are so many opportunities that we will get the power. But as Charlie Chaplin said, we really don't need power. The only thing that we need to bring about change is love. Love will get everything done. But Haman is not this kind of person. He's thirsty for power, and he wants all the power, not to serve, but to abuse. Because very early on in the story, we hear about men who are in the position of power, and they are bowing down to Haman. They are paying their respect, not because he deserves, but because the king has ordered. The text is very clear that they are bowing down to Haman because the king has ordered so. With this mentality, they realize that there is a person who is not doing the same, who is not bowing down to Haman at the city gates. And this man is Uncle Mordecai. They observe him. They are curious. They want to know why. They go to him and they tell him, "Why you are not doing the same as us, as the king has ordered? Why you are not bowing down to Haman?" But Mordecai, who revealed his Jewishness, does not listen to them. He is not intimidated by their numbers and by their actions. But Mordecai stands on his ground. He is not intimidated. He's a man of integrity, a godly man who will not bow down to an ungodly man, no matter how high his position in power is. Those men, rather than being inspired by the action of Mordecai, they are criticizing him. They are basically saying that, why you are not moving with the stream? Do as we are doing. Rather than getting inspiration from Mordecai's example, they want to put him down. And when they are disappointed that Mordecai is not changing his behavior because of their warnings, they go to Haman and they inform Haman. They want to see that once Haman is informed, they want to know if Mordecai will change his action, but Mordecai will not do so. And Haman, a small man in a big position, he cannot tolerate this bad news. He becomes filled with anger. The patterns in this book are very similar. Do you recall when Khashayar Shah asked Queen Vashti to come and display her beauty to his drunk men in his banquet? Was so enraged when Vashti said no. In the same manner, Haman is enraged. He's filled with anger when he realizes that Mordecai is not bowing down to him. And instead, he uses his power. And then he uses his position of power to put down Mordecai. But not only Mordecai, he says that I will get rid of Mordecai and all his people. That's his approach to power. As I said, he's using it to subdue, to kill. That's his mentality about power. Dear friends, in recent days, we heard a lot of the demonstrations that are taking place all across the world. And it was triggered by the bad and inhumane treatment of a black man, George Floyd, in America. We saw how a policeman in a position of power abused his power and put his knee on the throat of a vulnerable man to the point of his death. George Floyd's death was only a trigger, and it allowed people to vent their anger and frustration, their anger with the systematic abuse that has been working for a long time. Many people who have been traumatized for years, for decades, and even for centuries, found an opportunity to come to the streets and say, enough is enough. I cannot breathe. We can see how across the globe, from London to Australia, and from all the cities of the US, people are demonstrating, and they are crying for justice. And they are criticizing those who are in the positions of power. One interesting story took place in Washington, D.C., when people were peacefully demonstrating and crying for justice. And we learned about the president of the USA, Donald Trump, using that power to abuse people. He asked the military to push people away, and they basically, with violence, pushed the people away. And he found an opportunity to walk to a nearby church, holding the Bible like this, like this, like this. And very soon after that, he said, if the governors are not able to put down these demonstrations, I will utilize all my power, I will utilize the army and put down any opposition voice, and I will dominate. That was the language that he used. Isn't it interesting that the most powerful man in the United States uses his power, uses the military, and threatens people with violence? I made this example to bring to your attention that the stories of violence and abuse of power are not found only in the books of the Bible that were written a few thousand years ago. Violence and abuse of power is relevant even in our own day. Not only in the USA, but all across the globe, and even in Australia. We are hearing the cry of the Aboriginal people. We are hearing about the people who came to the streets yesterday, seeking justice, crying for liberty, crying for justice. And this injustice is happening at different levels, and unfortunately, sometimes at a systematic level. We have heard, we all know about the systematic abuse of the people who came to Australia as refugees. And many of them have been put in detention centers, in prisons, in Manus Island, in Nauru. And they have been kept under terrible circumstances for several years. Dear friends, if we remain silent, and if we don't walk in the footsteps of Mordecai, the abusers will gain victory. It is true that silence is violence. And unlike those people who came to Mordecai and criticized him because of not moving with the stream, in chapter 3, we learned about those people in power, in positions of power, who rather than being inspired by the example of Mordecai, they go to him and they criticize him that why he is not moving with the flow. But Mordecai is a man who is a true inspiration. He reminds us that there are times that we should stand for our beliefs. We need to be people of integrity. We cannot determine how we die, where we die, and when we die. But it is up to us to determine for what we die. That's a kind of person. Mordecai is truly a source of inspiration. But Haman, a small man in a big position, is not able to handle Mordecai's indirect criticism. And instead, he goes to the king. He goes to Hashayasha and says, "You know, king, there are a group of people in your kingdom whose customs are different to ours. They do not follow your orders. Why not killing them? Will you allow me to kill them and destroy them?" And he does so in a very cunning way. He knows that the treasury of the king is empty because of the ongoing battles and repeated defeats that he has received from the Greeks. So in order to motivate the king, he says that we can get rid of all of them, and all their money and wealth can go into the king's treasury. And the king now finds enough motivation to approve that genocide. He says, "Here is my signet. Use it. The people and the money are yours. Do as you wish." This happened in the first month of the year. And Haman sends messengers to all the provinces in the empire, informing of an exact date in the 12th month of the year. So in almost another 11 months, a mass murder will take place. It is in chapter 4 that we will learn more about the unfolding story. Early on in my sermon, I talked about Charlie Chaplin and his inspiring words. Let me finish my sermon today by reading his words to you. One of the greatest movies that he acted and directed is The Great Dictator. At the end of the movie, the dictator says these inspiring words. He says, "I am sorry. I do not want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. I wish." This was the approach of Haman, the dictator. I invite you to join me next week as we will be going through chapter 4 of the story. But in the light of our current circumstances, in the light of the demonstrations that are taking place all across the globe, I invite you to reflect in the light of the story of Haman and his abuse of power, and Mordecai and his stand for integrity. Let's think deeper. Let's remember George Floyd. Let's remember how he became the victim of not just a person, but a system. Let's all of us read the stories of the Bible, the story of Esther, and be inspired to become an agent of change. So in the name of the Father, and in the footsteps of Jesus, may the Holy Spirit on this Trinity Sunday help all of us to be agents of change, agents of goodness, agents of service, and remembering that the only thing that we need to get things done is love and not power. God bless you and have a blessed week. Bye.